You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe, and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
I want to thank our sponsor, Planet Ford. Planet Ford has always been a proud supporter of law enforcement in the community, providing customer service and fleet management, sales, and service. If you're looking for that personal quality service, contact Planet Ford in Spring or online at planetford.com. You're listening to Crime Scene Today. I'm your host, Dan Zentek. We talk about current and future issues facing law enforcement, forensic, and crime scene investigations. Today, joining me is Fadi Riss, a cold case detective from Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. Fadi, thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
So, cold case is very popular. It's on so many TV shows, and I guess it just sounds better than old cases, right? So, but it's become very popular, and I think one of the reasons it's become so popular is because there's been such a change in technology over the years in law enforcement that allows us to bring up old cases, and even though the techniques that we were using many years ago, collecting evidence, may have not been beneficial back then, the advances in DNA and just other technologies that we're able to use, and DNA being the biggest one, that we can actually find new suspects, identify old victims, and just really brings to light. And, to sort of brag about you and the department for a second, I've traveled to some homicide conferences, cold case conferences in the past, and the one thing that I found is so many different agencies make their detectives, or I say in their cold case division, are their homicide detectives. There will be a cold case that they're working along with any active cases, the regular cases that are coming in. And I think to really hit that home, there was one detective who was presenting a case, and it took him 7 years to work one case because he had to do it in between the active cases that were coming in for homicides that he was on call regular week. Montgomery County developed their cold case squad, and that is exactly what it is. It is dedicated to these cases, to solve them, and to work on these cases and have dedicated units to do that without being distracted, for a better term, of the current cases. There's another team that works those. It also allows for the ability for y'all to receive specific training in dealing with those type of crimes and the new technology and stuff. So I know that this is somewhat recent in the past couple of years that you've taken this on as some other detectives have moved out of this. So what are some of the challenges, I guess, and you worked all the active homicides, so what are some bigger challenges in working on cold case versus a fresh case?
So, like you said, DNA is the biggest thing now with the new technology. And with these old cases, you may have evidence and then you may not. And the evidence that you may have was not stored properly. And so the DNA, when tested, is not there.
And so degraded over time.
Correct. And so you're back to square one with that. That's one of the biggest challenges.
And we're going to talk about a case today. We'll get to a little bit, but it's a more recent case that you had brought in. But I wanted to talk about certainly y'all's website and what y'all currently have and different things that are open. See, if you go to the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, Texas website and go to cold case, or you can just type MCSO cold case and it'll pop up in your Google search. And there's a list, a PDF that's been created of y'all solved cases and your unsolved cases. At last that I checked, that there were 53 open cases that were listed on there. Again, there may be more that haven't been added. I know the one that we're going to talk about today is not currently on there. There's some updates that happen over time. Y'all have also put the ones that y'all have solved, and most of those are done from DNA. Today, we're going to be talking about a missing person. So it's not just murders that we don't find suspects in that lead to cold case. There's also missing persons. There's bones that we find, and those type of things. So in going through the list, because let's face it, it's much easier to solve a crime when you have a body.
Correct.
right? I mean,
Correct.
we have evidence of who it is. We have evidence of how things happened, how they were murdered, and so without the body, it creates a lot more difficulties, just like the case that we'll talk about. To cover a couple of cases, and this is just off of y'all's website, some of the 90s cases, because what we're going to be dealing with today is a missing person, that the body was not recovered. And when I say body was not recovered, it sort of leaves that open as, okay, well, how do we prove that they're murdered, right?
Right.
And we have a lot of cases like that. So going through some, these are just Montgomery County cases. Back in 92, we have Darrell Calhoun and Michael Keith. They went to a bar in Conroe to sell some weed. They were never seen again, but their vehicle was found. It was chopped up. It was in San Jacinto County, but again, they have not been found. In 93, Jane Crone, a 34-year-old female from Magnolia, went to a nightclub on November 12th. Husband reported her missing on the 13th, and her car was found in Harris County on the 19th. Again, she was never seen. In December of 94, Dudley Scott out of Splendor, which is a 52-year-old male with Down syndrome, had walked off and had many medical issues, but again, was never seen. In December of 97, Michelle Prazak, which is a 12-year-old out of Spring, the same area that we're going to be talking about today in our case. She was 12 years old. She is still missing. No body was ever found. And that's where it starts getting, when we talk about 50-year-olds, we talk about 34-year-olds, these type of things. Those are people that certainly could decide if they wanted to start a new life somewhere, and they could leave. And it's, again, one of the challenges we're going to talk about. But a 12-year-old, right off the bat, when a 12-year-old goes missing, totally devastating. You know something, foul play is suspected. And same with in 97, August of 97, Toby Coleman is an 18-year-old out of New Caney, is another missing person. So those are all cases that are from the 90s that are listed as missing, but obviously there has to be assumption by this point that they're dead, right?
Right.
I mean, we believe that if someone were to go and lead their own life, they would pop up somewhere on the radar, right?
Yes.
So tell me some of the challenges in a missing person case versus us having an active dead body lying there homicide case.
So the biggest issue is you don't have a crime.
Right.
You can't define a crime, and so you can't subpoena records because you don't have a crime in the state of Texas. That's just the way it works.
So first, to clear, I guess, a rumor, for lack of a better term, or a falsehood that a lot of people believe, they believe that you have to wait 48 hours to call the police for someone missing, to report them missing, okay, which is wrong.
That's right.
Right?
No, not right.
So I don't know where that comes from but so what exactly do we have, or what are some of the, I shouldn't say obstacles, but what are some things we have to start looking at before we move from this is a grown adult that moved on with their life to a foul play being involved?
You have to look at all the circumstances involved, and there's some circumstances in this case that a normal person would, for example, the cell phone. Everybody has a cell phone now.
Sure.
And you would
Right.
take your cell phone with you. It's like attached to your hip. And that was not the case in this case.
Right, so having a cell phone, not showing up for work when you're a regular employee,
A student going to school.
student going to school, friends that you contact every day, your parents you contact. There's just a normal pattern of life. But again, you have to overcome that obstacle to get subpoena powers, to get warrant powers, because in a warrant or in a subpoena, we have to name a crime. And in these cases, we have to basically either name murder or kidnapping. And we have to have probable cause to get to that point, right? And And in doing so, that's where this hurdle comes. It's because they didn't show up, and is there enough? Because there's nothing in the law that basically says after 48 hours they're missing.
Right.
There's nothing we can turn to that says if this, then we can use all of our legal powers that we have to look at cell phone records, bank records, all the things that we would normally do to try to see if they are still active in some way, right?
Right.
So, we've touched on it, but I mean, getting to your case, and I'll let you tell the story, but basically the general summary is on October 19th of 2011, T.J. Murray, Thomas Charles Murray, he was 24, went missing after leaving a bar, was currently a Sam Houston State University student and from the local area. So this happened in 2011. We're in 2020. No one has heard from TJ. There is every belief that TJ has been murdered, that there's foul play involved. There's no reason to believe that TJ has moved on with his life somewhere and is living somewhere that his parents are unaware of, his friends are unaware of. So Fadi, why don't you tell me a little bit about this case? I know you've done a lot of research on it.
So it was actually October 18th. He went out drinking with a friend of his, and they went to several bars in the Spring area off of Sawdust Road in South Montgomery County. They started off at one. TJ left his dad's truck that he drove that night to the bar, left that at the time it was On the Rocks bar.
Right.
Left his truck there, got in the car with his friend. They went then to the 19th hole bar. And then after there, they went to Rookie's Sports Bar, also on Sawdust Road. While at Rookie's, he got into a confrontation and was then kicked out of the bar. Now, this is after midnight, now the 19th.
Right.
He's seen out in front of the bar, assumingly waiting on his friend who's still inside the bar. He's then seen walking south along the sidewalk and then out of camera view at about 12:37 a.m. on the 19th. And that's the last time he's ever seen.
So now y'all have video of the bar. You have video of him leaving the
Yes.
bar, and some questions that we'll talk about in a little bit, because obviously this it's a very concerning case. I mean, we have a young person that's gone missing, possibly murdered, and they're at 20. You have all sorts of friends, and he had tons of friends that were greatly concerned. So some questions have come up as far as, and one was video. So were there other people on the rocks? Was it just him and his friend? Was there a confrontation there? Was there a reason they left that bar to go to the other than just bar hopping for the evening?
No, there was no confrontation on the rocks. There was a confrontation at the 19th hole.
Okay.
And we do not have video at 19th hole. That video was overwritten by the time we went to get it. So there was a confrontation with another couple, and we didn't hear that they got kicked out. They just left the bar.
On their own to go to another place. So, and when you speak about the delay, one of the things that certainly we can address in this, it's sort of out there, is one of the reasons, besides just this being a 20-year-old, is his connection to the community, or more importantly, his father's connection to the community, right?
Yes.
His father was a local coach for baseball and PE at one of the local schools, and very influential in the students' lives, very active, just a loved person by his students and whatever. So obviously when this tragedy happens to his family, so many people want to help, right?
Yes.
And one of the delays in this case is that due to those relationships that had developed, he had called a personal friend in law enforcement and relayed that to him. And so they sort of had conversations, again, going back to sort of our earlier talk, and that is what is missing, right? I mean, just
Right.
because someone didn't come home that evening, there has to be more. So they started taking time to look in to those avenues to explore. Is he truly missing? Did he just go on his own, or these type of things? And there was a delay before detectives got involved, before different things. So, like you said, when video had been erased, there was a delay in getting there to do those things, and whether it would have made a difference or not, seeing him there, that's not where he was last seen.
Right.
I mean, he was seen leaving the bar. The confrontation that happened at the bar obviously is the big, I guess, suspects in the case that most people will say, okay, well, obviously it's whoever he had a fight with at the bar, that they went and killed him and they dumped his body. But there's reason to believe that there wasn't actual time for that.
Right.
So tell me, I guess, why they didn't leave the bar right after him, right?
Correct. TJ's last seen walking away from the bar at 12:37. The group that he had a confrontation with didn't leave the bar until 1 o'clock.
And that was actually, I guess, orchestrated on purpose, because after this confrontation, TJ was kicked out of the bar.
That's right.
Okay, but the security or bouncers that were there had enough snap that they didn't allow the other people to leave.
Right away.
And basically said, y'all are staying here until he goes. So there wasn't like this immediate following out or whatever. That group, when they do leave, is there any trace of them again?
Yes. They went to actually another bar after they left Rookies, a little further south on 45, and they're seen on video there not long after.
So there's not a lot of time from the time they leave one bar before they're entering this other bar that would nearly make it extremely hard at best to commit a murder, do something with a body, and then casually walk into this bar. We're talking minutes. We're not talking 45 minutes, 30 minutes, hours, whatever. It's about the same time frame of driving there, or there's not much latitude of doing all this other stuff.
Correct.
So one of the other challenges in this case was social media.
Yes.
So we're talking 2011. Facebook is very popular, and it's very popular at that time with 20-year-olds. They'll tell you 20-year-olds now would never use Facebook, right? It's for old people. But back then it was very popular.
Yes.
And I know I was still attached to the unit back then. There was nothing that the police could do that was not documented on Facebook. And I don't mean having the phones out and whatever. I just mean that if you did an interview, it was posted on Facebook that you were interviewing so-and-so, you were going here, you were doing that, right?
Right.
So some problems that leads to. One of the biggest advantages we have as investigators is our knowledge behind the scenes of things that have happened, that the only people that would know are either us or the killer.
Right.
And some of that was taken away due to all that communication. Talking about the phone, because that's sort of how this comes up, okay? So you mentioned that he didn't have his phone, but what are some of the deals involved in his phone in this?
So we have him walking south from Rookies. And then his phone is found north of the bar, off of Borough Park. And so that raises the question. We went to traffic cameras and viewed the traffic cameras, and he's never seen walking across the street.
Right.
So it's assumed that he had to get into a vehicle for his phone to make it on the north side of Sawdust. And we have recovered the phone, and now you can't track that person, right? His phone that is trackable is not with him anymore.
So some of the questions that came up in reference to the phone, and again, I'm sort of going off of, so what I'm using, some citizens had questions. This is just on a forum that was out there on Reddit in reference to this case and such. And so a question came about the phone being found, and they refer to it as a ditch. I know personally it's more, there's not really ditches there. It's more of a business district, it's more of driveways and streets and things like that. But
Yes.
that being said, the question was there any sign that there was a disturbance where the phone was found? And, or, basically, is there any indication that he dropped his phone during a fight, or is it more like it was thrown out?
It's believed it was thrown out because of the way the phone was found. The phone was found with the back off and the battery off.
So someone had physically
Thrown it from a vehicle.
altered the phone prior to ditching it.
Yes.
Right. And, that being said, with, you had mentioned not having the phone. So you said that we don't see him crossing the street, which means that there has to either be him getting attacked, put in the car, on the other side of Sawdust, or trusting someone enough to get in a car with them. Speaking of that, and I know a lot's out there, he left his truck at On the Rocks.
Right.
So at On the Rocks, obviously there was a decision, I'm not going to drive, okay? Hopefully it's a logical decision that I'm drinking, I'm not going to go out there and be an idiot and drive drunk. Was there any communication between him and others, hey, come pick me up?
No.
So that's another question is basically, had he called other people? After I get kicked out of the bar, most people are going to be like, hey, I need help, right? So we have no communication after he leaves the bar with anybody.
Right.
And so now, in working any homicide, the biggest questions we always ask is why, right? Why, or more importantly, who would want to kill TJ,
Right.
right? So, what are some things that we've come up with? What are some reasons that someone would want to hurt him, other than just the fact that he was in an altercation in a bar, which happens every night, right?
We received information that he was a low-level drug dealer and was supposed to meet up with somebody to buy weed that night, had a large amount of cash on him.
So I mean, entering into the drug part of it, right? I mean, that's there's two things that homicide really hates to hear, and that's being involved in drugs or in gangs, because both of those really throw a wrench in the relationship part of it, right? Someone normally has to be close enough to you to want to harm you, but once you throw drugs in it, as you said, large amount of cash, could have been a robbery from it, could have been someone robbing him for marijuana, and I think that's what was found. That's what people talk about, saying he was sort of a low level dealing marijuana, which obviously not that uncommon in their 20s, doing some crazy things. But so that's one reason, right?
Right.
Do we have any indication of who he was dealing with?
No.
So we know that it's an option, right? We know that whenever we involve drugs in it, at that point, we speak to the logical of that night. Like, maybe he had money on him, maybe he went to go sell, maybe he was robbed. But that doesn't mean that there wasn't a drug deal that went bad a month ago, weeks ago, that there's something that ripped somebody off, did something or whatever. That's why I say when you enter into the drug part of it, there's so many other things you're dealing with my clients that I'm dealing with and all that. Some people questioned as far as Sammy State, and this is just sort of a geographical thing that you can sort of clear up, is they question why he would be down off of Sawdust if he was attending and living in Huntsville?
Sure. Like you said, his father is a local coach at the high school. They live in the area. He's from that area. He's meeting friends to go out who live in the area. He's also, prior to going to the bar, he was umpiring at the local baseball fields close to Sawdust. So as soon as he got done there, he picked up his dad's truck, met his friend at the bar. So it's all very close. He didn't go back home to change or anything like that.
And Sam Houston State's not that far. I
No.
mean, it's 45 minutes, 50 minutes.
It's not close, but
Right.
it's not that far.
There are people that commute,
Yes.
that actually will drive there to go to college and live in the same area in which he was at the bar and such. Which, I mean, for our listeners that don't live local, it's when you live in Texas, hopping in a car and driving 20 to 30 minutes is not a big deal. That's just a normal thing. So going 45 is not that big a deal. When in other states and other areas, I mean, driving 5 or 10 minutes is all the way across town, right? So, so just some geographical information there. So what are some things that have come in? Some tips to be addressed, or I guess since the disappearance. I mean, I know that we've had a couple of times that bones have been found that obviously were. I hate to use the word hoping, right? I mean, that we hope we find the bones, but at this point, I think we can all accept that TJ was murdered. I don't believe we're going to find him alive somewhere. So I think it's really proper to use that we do hope that we at least find where and whatnot. So,
Yes.
what are some things that we're looking for? What are some things that could help you in your investigation?
I mean, obviously somebody knows something, and this case being so old, probably relationships have changed. Maybe somebody knows something that they didn't want to say back then because it was their buddy. Now, not so much his buddy.
Yeah, people grow apart. People get consciences.
Have kids.
Have kids, and they have that information. And again, we talked about a time frame that there was a delay, and so there was a delay long enough that the body could have been moved. Whether it was stored, dropped in that particular area that evening, and then moved to a different location, that's all unknown. Those are all speculations. There's no way to know what happened at the point that he leaves the bar, he leaves video, and that phone is dropped. The phone is what sparked the investigation, because obviously a parent of a 24-year-old doesn't, the fact that they didn't come home for the night is really not that big of an issue. But once you find their phone, that's very unusual, and that leads back to, again, the missing person thing. Finding a phone. If we find a blood-soaked car, somewhere, that jumps us up. Now we can start using those things, right?
Right.
But some questions that have been asked as far as theories that some people throw out. One, what if he's just walking down the road, was hit by a drunk, and they load him up to get rid of the body? So anything to indicate a car going off the road in that area, anything that would lead us to, not throwing the theory out. There are numerous bars between 45 in that area.
Right.
But there's nothing that you've seen that would indicate, I would imagine you would have to leave the road. It's not just running over someone walking. And even if you did, there'd be something, right?
Something, right.
I mean,
Tire tracks, some
tire
kind of
tracks,
damage.
blood, something that, because obviously the body was not left there. It was not just hit and taken off. So you would have had to move a body. There's going to be some type of blood. There's going to be some type of indication that occurred. And we didn't find anything reported about that, finding those things. So, as far as the disturbance, as far as people that were with him that evening, from my understanding, this wasn't like an all-out brawl.
No.
This was words, either pushing or a slapping or something of that nature that led to him getting thrown out. The people that he had the altercation with, did he know him? Was he with them?
He was not with them, but they all know each other from the area. And that's kind of what sparked the incident. They knew each other, they conversated, and then the incident happened. It's not like he came up to some unknown random person.
So what has their involvement been, I guess, since that night in assisting y'all or helping y'all? Have they just been hands off, like we have nothing to do with it, so we're not talking? Or has there been any help from them to try to?
So they've all been talked to, some of them more helpful than others. Whether, some people want their attorney, have an attorney. Some people have given statements with their attorneys. So they've all been talked to. Some of them have even submitted to polygraph. So they have been helpful, you could say, to a point.
Right, but I mean the answer is if they truly are involved, or I guess I say if they're truly not involved, what information do you have? I was at the bar, Gay was there, and I went to another bar. I mean, what else do I have to say?
Right.
I know that interaction with them. They're also, let's face it, friends that we're hanging out with. They were into many of the same things TJ was, whether they're into drugs and whether it was dealing or just using, but they all had sort of that element to them that cooperating with the police, no matter how serious of the crime, was not a thing they were normally going to do anyway, right?
Right.
So, really it does come down to finding the body or finding someone to step forward. As far as the video when he's leaving, is there any indication of anybody else being outside when he's leaving, walking that? I mean, has anybody else seen following him around that area?
No.
He's just sort of on his own.
Just on his own walks, and that was it.
So obviously, going to 3 bars, we can probably assume that he had a few.
Yes.
His
dad actually spoke to him on the phone before he walks off the screen shortly before then. And his dad had spoken to him again on the phone 30 minutes prior to that. And he sounded okay. And then 30 minutes later when he spoke to him, he sounded like he was not okay, like he was trashed. And so that leads us to believe that he didn't only have alcohol on board, right? He's got some other kind of drug involved as well.
So basically, in 30 minutes' time, either he drank a whole lot to change that behavior, or he added a pill or some other drug which enhanced that behavior.
Yes.
So what was he calling his dad for?
Checking in.
So it wasn't for his dad to come pick him up.
Right. I think his dad was calling him to check in.
Oh, okay. All right. And so did he tell his dad where he was heading? It was just, hey, you're okay, and that's
right. That's it. Didn't say where he was going. Just that he was okay.
So would his family indicate that this was like normal behavior for him? I mean, honestly, it's pretty much normal behavior for 20-year-olds, but
yes, normal behavior for him to go out to the bar. That's not uncommon. Even not coming home the next day is not uncommon. If he's too drunk, he'd stay at home.
So what about the friend that he was hanging with all night? I mean, what's his take on all of this? Obviously, he spent a lot of time with him. during this. So what was the general attitude of the evening, their friendship? What part is he involved in all this?
He's just a good friend of his, and they were doing fine the whole night. It's not like they had any disagreements with each other. He was actually in the bathroom at the time of this incident, and
So he was not there when the actual altercation happened.
when he got kicked out, no, he wasn't.
So, but he didn't go with them,
Right.
or did he?
Go with them out.
Did he step outside with them to talk to him about it or anything?
No.
So he stayed in the bar the whole time.
Correct.
Did he start hanging with the other people? Did he leave with them? Or?
He did. He was seen with the other people, and didn't leave with them right away. He tried calling TJ, texting TJ.
So he still tried to communicate afterwards.
Correct.
And
And didn't get any response.
did he end up at the other bar with the group? You said they left there, they went to another bar. Did he go to that other bar?
No, he did not.
So he wasn't really hanging with them after they left there or anything.
No.
So, let's see what other things as far as is his truck. I mean, there's no indication that someone tried to go and take his truck,
No.
move his truck, which sort of would make you think that if someone was connected to him, meaning like his friend that wanted to harm him in any way, he would know that truck was there, whether to, people just move evidence and do those type of things. So, there's many, I say, reasons of looking at why someone would harm TJ. We have the drug incident, we have the fact he had money, which could be just someone just seeing the money and robbing. It has nothing to do with drugs. He's walking down the street, whether he has a confrontation with someone walking down the street that's totally unrelated to any of this, whether we have another party that you don't know about that he's interacted with to pick him up or otherwise. So at this point, and we are now 9 years or 8.5 years later, I know, again, there have been searches, so sort of covering some of the things that people ask about. They've searched the area.
Numerous searches.
Numerous searches with EquiSearch, which is our horses and the dogs, and everybody have come out and searched. We've had hurricanes, we've had floods. This is up near Spring Creek,
Yes.
which has come up and down and those type of things. If the creek was involved in this disappearance, that could hinder some finding him and finding evidence. But again, those places were searched extensively, and nothing's been found since then. It's a very fast developing area. There have been things construction equipment that's come in that has excavated area for new builds. Nothing's been found with that.
Right.
So at this point, it's nearly believed that his body was not in that area.
Right.
I mean, that it had to be taken somewhere. And whether that's local, obviously, we don't know the condition that he is in when he loses his phone, for lack of a better term. Whether it's in a trusting nature with someone that he's perfectly fine and someone just grabs his phone and throws it, whether he is hurt at that point, whether he's already dead at that point, which really plays a big factor as far as how far he could go, take someone or whatever. We have belief that he was taken in a car, and this is about what time in the evening do we have him crossing the road?
We don't have him crossing the road.
Or not cross, when he leaves the bar? At what time?
12:37 a.m. on the 19th, October 19th.
So even though there's a lot of bars, it's more of a business district of businesses that close at 9 and 10 o'clock.
Correct.
All right, so there's not a lot of activity out there. There's some apartments that are further down the road.
Yes.
And some of those are lower income apartments where some people do walk to and from the store. but it's very rare that they'd be doing that at 1 in the morning.
Right.
So very few, I guess, opportunities for just a random witness to come forward. It seems like a majority of what you're looking for is someone that was either involved in this or talking about it. And I know that that's another difficulty that we had. We talked about the social media and all the information that would come out on that we had a lot of, I won't call them false confessions. They weren't confessions at all, but it was, hey, I know what happened to TJ. Oh, what happened to TJ? Oh, well, he was at a bar. He got in this fight. He did this. And what they're telling is the story they've heard because it's been on Facebook. It's been everywhere, and so said that this person killed him. Okay, well, who said that? Well, Susie heard it from Mike, who heard it from Lisa, who was at this party, right? So, I mean, we're like 4 or 5 people down, and when you go and search those rabbit holes, again, it would just be the story that they heard. There was so much information out there, and again, it takes away that one element that we normally are looking for, and that is, tell me something the public doesn't know.
Right.
Tell me something that we haven't released, because so much had been released on this, right? Yeah, I think that's another, I say problem. It's a balance between releasing the information that we have to try to get a lead on it versus holding some things close to the chest to at least be able to validate when someone does come forward.
Yes.
Right. And so, in speaking of TJ, and I know, again, sad for the family as far as the community and the connection with him. And I know that, what was it, 7 or 9 months later, his brother had also passed away, had drowned on I think it was a tubing deal. So the family has just had impact after impact, losing their sons and stuff. And certainly we want closure for them. We want to get the family justice, TJ justice. But it's a very hard case. It is. There's someone out there that certainly knows. There's someone out there that certainly can help. Whatever, I guess, their reason for not coming forward 9 years ago hopefully is different now. Hopefully there's something, and there are ways to reach cold case. You can call the number as far as the Sheriff's Department, 936-760-5800, and get in touch with Detective Risk, or just ask for a detective. It doesn't even have to be him. Tell him you have information, and you can remain anonymous by going to Crime Stoppers, Montgomery County Crime Stoppers, and leave a tip there. And by doing so, they'll even pay you. They will give you money. There's currently a $20,000 reward I think the family had put up for information on TJ's murder. So they are willing to, I'm not sure who you're protecting or what information you have that's available, but there's $20,000 that can buy you a nice vacation or whatever you're looking for to actually solve this crime, and we would look forward to doing that. Speaking of just some of the techniques and things to sort of, is there anything else you wanted to add on the TJ case?
Also, real quick,
Yeah.
we have our emails are under the cold case section of our website. If
Yeah,
email
go
is rather what you want to do, and it's my email is fadi.rizk@mctx.org.
And we'll I'll put those up on Facebook and on Crime Scene Today. So we'll put a link to the cold case file. We'll put a link to their emails if you want to add anything, if you have any tips and stuff. So just speaking in general, as far as cold case and some technology changes and things like that, I saw on the website that y'all had used Parabon, the face thing, where Parabon actually takes the genetic DNA and sort of does it. So snapshot, that's it. So so tell me a little bit about that, how they've come along with that and what that's sort of used for.
So the DNA snapshot is for their characteristics of what that person would have looked like, if they had freckles or the color of their hair. It's more of a generic description.
Sort of build a 3D model. I mean, I know that like in looking at y'all site, y'all have currently, at least what I found, there may be more, found 5 skulls. And again, back to what y'all do. It's not just about the homicides. You got remains that are found. You have the missing persons, and so we have, like I said, 5 skulls that don't know who they are.
Right.
And not knowing who someone is one of the first things you have to do in homicide. Who are we dealing with to find out all the links of who they're connected to and whatnot. So, so using genetics now, they're able to tell, I guess, build, skin color, ethnicity, different things. So I know that I think that's the only one that I've seen doing it so far.
Yes.
Is the snapshot.
Parabon.
So they at least are able to do sort of like what a forensic artist does. I mean, it's sort of a stretch. I mean, a forensic artist has someone describing someone they've seen.
Sure.
Right. And in this case, we've never seen them. We don't know who they are.
Right.
But just the same as they used to build the clay and try to see what the person would look like, this is using it genetically, which I think is fascinating. I think that, but it still comes down to someone's got to recognize them.
Correct.
Right? I mean, we have a picture, but we still have to have them recognized.
Right.
And so the DNA for missing persons is still going through North Texas.
Yes.
So
University of North Texas.
University of North Texas handles the missing persons DNA and keeps a database. The problem with that, with DNA in general, is it has to be on file somewhere, right? I mean,
to compare it to.
To compare it to someone, to bring up to say this was so and so, there has to be DNA. You and I would be fine because any homicide detective, we have to have our DNA put on file to rule out, right?
Right.
But as far as an average citizen, most average citizens that commit no crimes or commit misdemeanor crimes, their DNA is not on file. So when they show up missing, just because we're able to get DNA, it doesn't always link to that person, and that's one of the hurdles, again, that we're coming over. There's been changes in the laws most recently. We've talked about that on the show. I know that last legislature in Texas allowed for when we're booking in people on even more crimes. It used to only be like 2, but when we're booking people in now, we take their DNA, and it's really where it's at right now because they still haven't developed the database and sort of what we're doing with it, but at least legally we're able to take it now, and that at least leans it to a database of someone who's gone to jail.
Right.
There's still a large portion of the population that's never gone to jail,
Right.
thankfully, and that leads to the problem of trying to find these people.
And that leads us into very new technology, the genetic genealogy.
Right.
And that's something that we're also exploring with these cold cases.
So explain briefly sort of that part of it. I know there's familial DNA, which is the connection, but now they're looking at the genealogy part of it.
Yes, and that's, let's say we have an unknown suspect DNA, and we can take that DNA and have a genetic genealogist track the genealogy, their family tree, and be able to point us to the person that this DNA belongs to based on these DNA websites, Ancestry.com, 23andMe, GEDmatch, Family Tree.
Right, and so it goes back to sort of the original statement is that it's got to be somewhere, right? And so, but a lot of people have voluntarily given their DNA for the genetics of finding out where I came from, who I'm related to,
Right.
And those type of things. In doing so, and there was a court case, and obviously the big court case was in California. They caught a killer off of this because
Golden
it was
State Killer.
right, the Golden State Killer, where it was related, which then brought up privacy issues of opting in, opting out for allowing law enforcement to have access to this database.
Right.
So many of them have shut down allowing access. And when I say shut down, I mean that before you had to tell them, I don't want the police to have access. And now you have to agree to allow them to have access. And some people still do. But I know that it was a database of millions that dropped to thousands in 1 week. So it's slowly building up. It does at least give us an area, which sometimes is beneficial. that this family member, this person was from Louisiana, southern Louisiana, those type of things. So again, it is. I think that's one of the latest technologies that's really going to show some advancement. Again, it sort of goes back to that database and something that we always fight as police under the privacy issues on whether people allow us to have that information. I certainly have heard both arguments. I know the arguments of the rights of you not having your stuff in the database, and we've talked about the possibility of abuse of that, and I guess that does exist. I just see it, and again, obviously I'm coming from a law enforcement side of more of a benefit to you and your family if anything ever happens that we have that information. And again, when all we find is a skull, it doesn't matter if you have DNA at your house, if you have swabs of your own, if you have this, if there's nothing, even if it's on 23andMe or some gene database that at least we can link that and find that person, then possibly these other 7 or 8 cases I talked about from the 90s, their skull may be sitting in another county, and trying to get those together as far as their DNA. And many of the times we have a missing person, we're able to get things off their toothbrush, off their hairbrush, off of different things. But again, we weren't really thinking about a lot of those things in the 90s. So yeah, there's a lot of advancements. I see that being a great tool. I know that they were working on it years ago because when we were doing CODIS, which was junk DNA, and what I mean by that is it was meant to be that way. It wasn't supposed to identify someone who was white, black, Hispanic, anything about them. It was certain loci on the genes that would just identify this person was a match to this other DNA. They've been able to do it for years. They were testing it at the ME's office in New York when I was up there, and that was close to about 15 years ago, that they were determining, hey, this shows the color of their eye, this shows their skin color, and these type of things. So it's been around. It's just taken this long to sort of be accepted, which is great. It means they've tested it for that amount of time to come to that conclusion. So, Fadi, we appreciate you coming out and talking to us and bringing this case. I know you have many other cases, and as you dig into those and you have information, anytime you want to put something on the show and get that out there to share with people, because we know that majority of our crimes are solved by our citizens, by people coming forward and helping the police, working with the police. They're such a great asset that we have out there to assist us, and we hope someone listening hopefully has some information on TJ. Hopefully that'll come forward and bring some closure for the family and get this case solved. If anyone wants a topic on the show, if anyone would like to be on the show, have something that they'd like to talk about law enforcement related, any questions that they have, and certainly if they want to sponsor a show, they can reach me at dan@crimescenetoday.com. I always like to thank our Lone Star Radio for hosting, our producer Dick. We created the show about a year ago, and if you want to create a show, just contact ourlonestar.com, and they'll work that out with you. So we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to you tuning in next week.
Thank you.